You're listening to the Stand Up Angler, and my daddy's the host.
All right, well, special thanks to my sweetheart for the introduction, and welcome to the Sustainable Angler, the podcast where we discuss the intersection of fishing, conservation, and sustainability. I'm your host, Rick Crawford. So I'm super excited to share this new 4-part series called The Rise of Sustainability Regulations with special guest James Pollack from Marten Law, where we will take a deep dive into PFAS, Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR, for packaging and textiles, climate-related disclosures, and green marketing claims that are impacting fishing and outdoor brands all over the country over the next 4 weeks. At Emerger Strategies, I help brands reduce cost, enhance their reputation, and increase customer loyalty by measuring and improving their sustainability performance. But did you know that sustainability can also help your brand mitigate regulatory risks? That's why I'm thrilled to interview James, who is an environmental and regulatory lawyer who helps outdoor gear, apparel, and footwear industries reduce their environmental impact and market sustainability in transparent ways. James counsels trusted national brands on the complicated regulatory and litigation environments surrounding material inputs, emerging contaminants, green marketing claims, and climate impacts. And I'm thrilled to share this special podcast series on the rise of sustainability regulations with y'all. In this episode, James and I discuss green marketing claims that do not deceive consumers, discuss greenwashing and green hushing, and James provides some tips and resources for credibly marketing your sustainability efforts, such as third-party certifications and using the Federal Trade Commission's green guides. We also finally talk a little fishing as James shares how he got into fly fishing and how that inspires his work as an environmental lawyer. On that note, I want to share some exciting news in that Emerger Strategies has launched our brand new sustainability sales and marketing services, created to help fishing and outdoor brands credibly and transparently tell their sustainability story while avoiding greenwashing and driving sales. So head over to www.emergerstrategies.com to book a free 30-minute consultation. The Sustainable Angler is available anywhere you listen to podcasts and is also airing Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Charleston's first and only community-supported radio station, OWN Radio 96.3 FM. If you like what you're hearing, an absolutely free way to show your support of the show is by leaving it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. This episode of the Sustainable Angler podcast is brought to you by Emerger Strategies and a New Earth Project, the sustainability initiative of Atlantic Packaging. Did you know that sustainability isn't just the right thing to do, it's smart business? At Emerger Strategies, we simplify sustainability for small and medium-sized businesses, helping you meet retailer demands, build customer loyalty, and protect the planet. Whether you're navigating retailer sustainability assessments, tackling EPR for packaging requirements, or measuring your carbon footprint, we help you measure and improve your brand's sustainability performance. Our clients in the fishing and outdoor industries are thriving, saving time and money, and growing their businesses, all while reducing their environmental footprint. We've been simplifying sustainable business since 2016, empowering brands like yours to make a real impact without the need to hire, train, and retain a full-time sustainability team. Ready to make sustainability your competitive advantage? Visit emergerstrategies.com to learn how we can help your business profit sustainably.
We set out with the New Earth Project to really start a movement.
It's a global coalition of people who are deeply concerned and want to accelerate the transition away from problematic packaging to more sustainable solutions.
Our entire value proposition was built on helping companies package things better. We were doing sustainability before sustainability was cool. We just called it packaging optimization. And packaging optimization really is about using less. And we built our whole business on that. You know, people send us their products, their goods, and we help them design packaging systems and solutions for the least possible cost, utilizing the least amount of material. Use less is always the right answer.
And that's what I see with companies like a New Earth Project is it's like, we're just trying to create solutions for big companies and small, that makes it easier for them, cheaper for them, whatever it is, and then has less impact. Not just trying to tell people you should have less impact and making the choice forced on them. Like, make it better for everybody, and it'll make it better for the whole world.
We see the problem, and we are with you.
Always happy to join the podcast.
All right. So James, as you know, I am a sustainability consultant. I work with fishing and outdoor brands to help them measure and improve their sustainability performance. And there are just a plethora of studies that demonstrate this, but I see it with my clients as well, that there's a growing number of consumers that are supporting brands that align with their values. But I'm curious to know, your take on why are these companies creating these sort of green marketing claims that are available? Like, I know obviously they want to target these consumers and these anglers that I've just talked about, but what other reasons do they have for doing so?
Yeah, I mean, that research, as you say, it's out there. Consumers are demanding products that have less of an impact on the environment in a number of different measures, different ways that we measure environmental impact, and sort of the broad set of concepts that fit within sustainability. The other piece, I think, from the brand side, beyond capturing that market, and the potential growth within that market, which does outpace conventional products based on that research. The other reason is being able to connect with sort of a brand story. I mean, folks who get into this industry, we're talking about fly fishing brands primarily. When you get into a stream, it's hard not to feel a connection to the environment. You're really getting to know this place around you, the water you stand in, the mountains around you, the tree cover that provides shade for the fish, the temperature of the water and how that changes and impacts what species can thrive in the water. The restrictions on fishing because of the stress that the heat and all of these other factors have on the fish. It's hard not to feel a connection to all of that experience. And that motivates folks when they create these brands. They want to express those values through the products that they provide. And so being able to speak authentically about those values and how they're expressed in the products, it's another piece of your brand story. The risk is, and this gets at some of what we're going to be talking about today, having the information needed to make truthful and substantiated, which is a term we're going to be talking about quite a bit, claims in the green space. There are so many different features to a product that you could make the focus of a sustainability initiative, from the material inputs, the energy inputs, the types of materials that you use, the circularity of the materials, the longevity of the materials. There's so many different product aspects that you could make the centerpiece of a sustainability claim. And similarly, there are a number of aspects of your business, which goes beyond the product itself, to your business practices, the ways that you engage in business, the ways that you engage with your suppliers. So there are a set of business-related claims in the sustainability space. And the challenge is making those claims with the correct information, the correct backing in a way that doesn't deceive the consumer who's looking for a product with a lesser impact on the planet. And that's what leads to things like greenwashing, which we'll talk about, as well as, to some extent, green hushing, which I'm sure we'll also get at in this conversation.
Oh yes, I live in this world, so this is a fun one. So I'll provide an example for everyone listening. This is one when I was going through my MBA in sustainable business program that we highlighted. And before our call, I was doing a little bit of research, and apparently they're being sued again, but for greenwashing. But Fiji bottled water. Okay, this is like a classic greenwashing example, right? Because on their bottle, they depict that, lush tropical mountains. It's their messaging is like it comes straight from the source. They even created a little green logo label, I guess, on it, saying that that the water actually helped to reduce carbon emissions, with no substantiation. And in fact, when you look more into the company, you realize that they're actually, I think the stat I saw was 47% of Fijians don't have access to clean, safe drinking water. There's also the transportation emissions and sort of the insanity of bottling water in plastic bottles made from fossil fuels and shipping them halfway around the world. So that was an example that I was given and is still holds true today, I guess. But just for everyone listening, when we talk about greenwashing and sort of these green marketing claims, that's an example of a company who's saying, I want to tap into these consumers who are demanding this, right? I want to capitalize on this, take advantage of it, and sell to them so that they feel good about the product that they're buying. And then ultimately they're deceiving them, because when you start to look at the ins and outs of the business and their operations and everything, it's actually, there's nothing green or sustainable about that. So other than the fact that water is water, right? It's natural. So that, I think, might be helpful for some people that are going, what is greenwashing and what does that mean? That's a pretty specific example. But we know, James, that, sustainability is everywhere. And I guess, but when does a green marketing claim cross the line into greenwashing? Like, what does that look like?
It's a great question. And this gets at, again, a theme throughout our discussions is the way that the law or sustainability regulations are working to incorporate practices that developed in the sustainability sphere into legal frameworks. So it's worth zooming out a bit at how does the law treat deceptive practices and what becomes a deceptive practice. The sort of North Star within the U.S. is the Federal Trade Commission. It's an agency that does enforcement around deceptive practices, but also around anti-competitive practices. They have a very broad mandate to prevent unfair or deceptive acts or practices that affect commerce. Now, that really broad mandate then gets translated into regulations or guidance on how to engage in marketing that doesn't deceive the consumer. And that really North Star document within the sustainability space is known as the Green Guides. The Green Guides are guidance documents. It's a legal document. It's technically non-binding, but provides quite a bit of useful information for folks. As far as legal documents go, I think it's among the more readable legal documents. But there's a spectrum of legal documents and readability. But it's a useful guide for how to translate that prevention of deceptive practices into real marketing guidance. How do I actually make these kinds of claims in a way that is legally sound. And it provides some like really basic operational principles that if you just apply these, they can be a really helpful guide. First, your claim should be clear, prominent, and understandable. So does just the lay person reading your claim, do they understand what kind of claim you're making? Is it specific in its application, the claim? So is it clear whether you are referring to the product? Are you referring to the packaging? Are you referring to the material or a particular component? So if you say something is recyclable, do you mean the cardboard packaging around it, or do you mean the product itself is recyclable? That's just one example.
Yep.
Is the claim supported by a reasonable basis, which means substantiation? It means you have some sort of evidence backing up the type of claim that you're making. And so do you have a competent and reliable scientific evidence? And that really depends on the type of claim that you're making. So if you're making a claim about the content of the product, you're saying it's recycled content. Do you have documentation showing that it is in fact recycled content that you are putting into the product? If you are making a claim that it is X% organic, do you have substantiation? Do you have documentation to show that it is in fact organic? And beyond, those sort of general principles, it's worth noting that the green guides also provide some really specific guidance about specific claims, things like recyclable, recycled content, compostable, organic, and sustainable. Those all have some pretty specific definitions in the regulations that are worth taking a look at. And the reason that I zoom in on that, even though the green guides are technically guidance, is that several states have adopted the green guides explicitly into state law. So the FTC isn't the only regulator out there. There are also states that have adopted this and do enforce for greenwashing. And so they have explicit greenwashing statutes. States have also incorporated definitions in some cases that go above and beyond the green guides. So in California, for example, they have increased sort of the barrier to making a recycling claim, a recyclability claim. Traditionally, from the FTC's guidance, it has to do with whether if recycling facilities are available to 60% of the population within a given jurisdiction. So could you access these facilities? And there's even like mileage radiuses and the way that you calculate these things. It's very easy to do when you're talking about something like cardboard, but becomes more complex when you talk about other types of materials. Now, California, you can only use the recycling icon and talk about the recyclability of a product. It's not just that the recycling facilities are available, it's that recyclers have an acceptance rate. So not only is there something available, but they'll actually accept that and ultimately recycle it. So you're measuring actually a different thing. And I know those sound like very similar numbers, but it's actually a distinction that ends up mattering because some recycling facilities may be available, but not ultimately accept that particular material and put it through the recycling process. And so the details end up mattering for these kinds of claims is the long story short.
Yeah. And it sounds like too, with all of it, this supporting documentation, data to back all these things up. And like, let's just, for the sake of right now, I guess, I'm creating a fictitious company, right? And it's, I'm technically on vacation, so I'm in vacation mode. So we're going to say it's Rick's Hula Girls, and I sell little dancing hula girls on for your dashboard. Okay. And so I sell that and I say, I have a sticker on it that says eco-friendly, and then I have another sticker that says recyclable, and that's it. And I have no supporting documentation, but I made this product, and what I meant was that the grass straw on the skirt was eco-friendly, and that you could probably recycle the cardboard, but I didn't differentiate any of that. I didn't. The claim was not very specific, so it was general. It was not supported by any documentation. That's what we're talking about with greenwashing. And so, no one take my hula dashboard idea. That one's mine, but that's what we're talking about. So let's just say that Rick's Hula Girls goes to market with this. What legal risks does my brand face if these claims are misleading in that way?
Yes, there are kind of three tiers of legal risk. One is potential federal enforcement. And, the FTC, you can find all of their enforcement activities on their website. They will often prioritize a specific concept. They recently had a number of enforcement efforts around products that were advertised as being made with bamboo, for example, when they were actually using rayon. So they will have enforcement emphasis, but they can enforce across a wide variety of potentially misleading claims. So federal enforcement is one factor here. The second one would be state enforcement. So very similar to the federal enforcement, but state-based. And the advantage that states have is that they often have their own independent greenwashing statutes, which may have their own independent penalty authorities and have codified that guidance from the feds. So it can be a more straightforward enforcement activity for the states. The third is consumers. So consumer class action is another potential set of risks relating to green marketing gone wrong. And those risks are real and take the form of class action lawsuits.
Yeah, and so that is for any brands who might be listening. That's typically why you'll hear most sustainability consultants support third-party certifications and verification of claims, because you have the documentation, the paper trail, the data to back up and verify everything that you're claiming. Not to say that just automatically gets you off the hook, but it certainly is a way to mitigate that risk, I would say, if you're dealing with a third-party certification. So just something to consider before you decide you want to start talking sustainability and targeting consumers with your messaging. This is something that a lot of, especially small to medium-sized brands, really don't think about. And so it is something the FTC Green Guides is a reference that we use and point people towards. You should definitely get familiar with that at a minimum.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a really dynamic space. It's not just the Green Guides in the States. I haven't brought the international sphere into the room, but
Yep.
Canada in just the last few months has become much more active in the green marketing space, adopting its own independent green marketing guidance that they announced the finalization of that, I think, last week, so early June 2025. And that has sort of its own set of requirements around having testing data for certain types of product claims, having certifications for certain types of claims. And then the EU, as part of its broader green efforts, part of the Green Deal, also has its own set of green marketing directives and requirements as well.
So you've got international, federal, and some states. That's That's a lot to drink in for a company who's selling internationally. What what should these brands or any brand be doing sort of behind the scenes to make sure that these claims are compliant with some? I mean, I know that it will depend on if you're selling to EU or Canada, but are there any sort of general um, tips or pointers you would give to a brand to to make sure that they're not, or at least being pointed in the right direction?
So I think as a first step, I would be interested in having someone think about, what kind of claims they want to be making. So how does this connect into a broader marketing strategy? How does this connect with your story? How does this connect with the types of things that you're building into your design process? And I would then take a look at the green guides, certainly, and think about engaging with external resources, whether consultants or legal or someone like that, to ensure that for the type of claim that you're making, that you're able to build out the data set needed, the records needed, based on the relevant set of regulations or requirements that you're looking to make. So I think starting though from the beginning, the standpoint of we want to tell this particular sustainability story because it's important to us or important to our consumers, that helps you focus in on the types of claims that you want to be making. So rather than scattershot, like we want to make recycling and organic and repairability and this performance claim and that performance claim and, sort of a hodgepodge of things, think strategically about the types of claims that you want to be making and why, whether they're important to you, important to your consumers, important to your regulatory compliance efforts, or to the fees that you'll be paying for EPR down the road, or there are all kinds of reasons to be making something an important part of your brand development. But if you start from that values-driven exercise and then dive into, well, then what does that mean? What do we need to do that? That can be a helpful direction to go in.
Yeah. I mean, that's all, we're talking, marketing strategy and getting into, being a purpose-driven brand and to say, okay, what are our values? How do we align our values with our operations, our products, our packaging, and how do we want to communicate and understand why this is important for us to do these things? I mean, I think for most fishing, fly fishing, surfing, outdoor, whatever it is, these types of companies, it makes a ton of sense to support conservation, develop products and packaging that is in line with protecting the planet ultimately. And so there are a host of different certifications you could consider. There's a host of things that you could do to tell that story and connect it to your brand and your products. But these are some really good pointers in terms of, hey, we're trying to figure some of this stuff out and where should we start? So I appreciate that. So last week we were talking. Well, that's going to be released next. Actually, I'm getting my wires crossed. But we were talking about SB 253, AB 1305. So that's related to climate-related disclosures in California. And how might some of these laws impact how fishing and outdoor brands market themselves nationally?
It's a great question. So when folks market, the relevance of those laws is specific to carbon-related claims, which is a category of claims we haven't really talked about very much up to this point. We've been focusing more on sustainability attributes of products relating to product inputs. But of course, the carbon intensity or the carbon impact of a product or of a business practice is a whole nother aspect of the way that you talk about your sustainability as a brand. So those laws, which relate to disclosure and documenting the ways that you go about calculating the output, the disclosures, as well as the need to disclose if you're making claims relating to carbon credits, each of those will make public the ways that you go about deriving claims around your climate impact. So if you were going to set a target, these climate disclosures will then show how you're doing to get to that target and whether you're taking the steps needed to ultimately reach that. And there's been quite a bit of greenwashing related litigation around folks setting targets and the reasonability of the steps taken to achieve those targets. There's with the carbon credit disclosures, that also is going to affect the way that you market around it. So if you're going to make product related or business related claims about significant reductions in your greenhouse gas impact, and you're relying on voluntary carbon products to meet those reductions, you have to provide that documentation. You have to show what types of credits you're buying. So it affects it sort of twofold. It affects it in that you have to disclose it, and it affects it in that folks are going to be looking, at the details here. Like, you can't just huff about reductions without showing the work, and folks may have feelings about the types of credits that you get. And so ensuring that they're high quality credits becomes part of the calculation here and part of how someone goes about doing business and making those kinds of claims.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I think like a few years ago when Science-Based Target Initiative came out, and which was another step in the process, right, of this sort of rapidly evolving measurement of greenhouse gas emissions. It started to get more serious, and then you kind of started to see sort of after that when you're like, oh, well, there's some big companies that are making net zero by 2050 claims and aren't really doing anything to reduce. They're maybe just going to purchase offsets. And some of those offsets weren't very credible, I guess. So that is maybe what has caused some of this. But I think it's something that a lot of companies I know want to take climate action, and they want to be able to demonstrate that. And so I think that again, I would fall back to, and you correct me if I'm wrong, James, but I mean, fall back to these FTC guidelines. Look at making sure that your measurements are credible, they're data driven, and if you're going to use carbon offsets, that you are willing to share all of the information on that, for what types, where they came from, basically all the info to make sure that they're additional, credible, all the things, and you're not scared to talk about those for how you're achieving your reduction goals. Okay, so let's say again, I'm a small brand, and I genuinely want to do the right thing, and I'm trying to bring more sustainable products to market, but I don't have a sustainability consultant, or I don't have a legal team, and maybe we already covered this in these refer to FTC, but are there any other big steps that or first steps you would take to avoid greenwashing and market responsibly, other than follow FTC green guides?
Good question. So as far as like written resources go, I do think I'll have to check to see. I think that the EU has its own version as part of its green directive that would be worth reviewing as well, especially if you're engaging in the EU market. I don't think any states have provided green marketing specific documents or guidance documents in the same way that the FTC has. So uh, uh, I think it's hard to point to specific external resources.
Yeah.
I think what I would say though, from working with folks in this space, working with brands, one of the first steps that I would take if I were in their shoes would be actually to look internally at the types of claims that you're already making. So, different departments may not be connecting the dots. Your product development team may be speaking a different language from the marketing team, who's speaking a different language from your compliance or legal or business management. It's worth taking a look at, well, what kind of claims are we already making, and do we have the substantiation to be making those claims? So other than the green guides and looking for comparable resources for jurisdictions like the EU, I would say that as a de-risking strategy, trying to get up to speed, I would first look internally and take a look at the types of sustainability claims that you're already making that may be creating risk already.
Yep. Okay. So sort of an internal audit, refer to the FTC green guides, and then just make sure that with any sort of claims that you're going to make that sort of align with your broader marketing or brand strategy and your values, that it makes sense, and that you're able to support that with documentation, data, and in some cases, third-party certifications. Sounds like.
Yeah. No, and part of it depends as well on the product set that we're talking about. I mean, there are other types of claims that folks seek to make that are adjacent to sustainability related claims, but have their own set of resources and requirements. So, it's worth taking a look at the Made in USA, compliance guidance that's put out by the FTC. There are disclosure requirements relating to wool inputs, for soft goods, for general textile labeling, and the types of labeling and care labeling that are required for soft goods. So there's a whole broad set of things of guidance documents relating to product inputs that are also worth taking a look at. The other piece, I guess, if I were pointing to external resources that's worth talking about, are certification agencies and things like that. So depending on the materiality that we're talking about, there are often standards or certifications relating to those materials. So if you're talking about recycled inputs, there's GOTS certification. If you're talking about organic input, that's GOTS. I was already thinking ahead to the next one.
The GOTS, and then there's like Blue Sign is one.
Yes,
for
there's Blue Sign. There's the responsible down standard. There's the leather working group standard for leather. So depending on the particular materials that you are using, or the types of claims relating to those materials that you'd like to be using, there's probably an entity that is doing that kind of work that could also provide you with resources and expertise in that space, so that you can be making sure that you're making defensible sustainability related claims.
Okay, cool. All right. So green marketing claims. This is, I thought that well, let me back up. So I think those were put out, or I don't know how long ago, like 2012, for some reason sticks in my mind, was when they were put out. And this is sort of the evolution of sustainability, right? It was corporate social responsibility, and then it became green, and then sustainability, and now it's regenerative, and this continues to evolve. But green marketing claims sort of encompasses, for the most part, environmental and some social claims like fair trade and stuff like that. That you're going to make on your products, and brands are doing that, some better than others. And the ones that do it poorly get accused of greenwashing, right? Because they're not, they want to capitalize on the growing number of consumers that support brands that align with their values, and they value sustainability and protecting the environment, all these things. But they're not doing the actual work to verify or certify or back up with documentation, and they're the ones who end up getting in some trouble. So we've got a few more minutes here, James, but I wanted to ask you before we talk fishing, which we're finally going to get around to, I think. On the green marketing claims, is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to make sure maybe that we mentioned, or at least something that maybe I overlooked and we're not talking about?
I think we've covered quite a bit of the scope. I think the challenge is when you talk about all of these risks involved and all the steps and the substantiation, it can get really daunting to make these kinds of claims. And that's, to bring it back, the hesitance to make these kinds of claims is greenwashing. It's the desire to not advertise the great work that folks are doing in the space because of a fear of potential enforcement, a fear of someone going after you for not doing exactly the correct thing. I hope that that's not the takeaway that folks have from this conversation. It is a challenging set of requirements. I don't want to say that it's the easiest thing in the world, but there are a lot of resources out there. There are people who can help. There are certification agencies. There are all kinds of folks within the space, depending on the particular product set that you're looking at. There are resources there. There are folks working in the space. There are consultants. There are certification bodies. There are testing agencies. There are all kinds of resources there to make sure that you're making defensible claims. The scariest thing is when you make a claim without any substantiation or any attempt to justify it or substantiate it. That's really the scariest thing. I think folks who are working to engage in this thoughtfully, who are working to build the backing, who are working to collect the documents, that's great. I mean, it's exactly what you need to be doing. And so I just hope that the takeaway from this isn't, it's so complicated, forget about it, we're not going to even try.
Yeah.
That's not the takeaway here. There is really great work going on, and there are ways to make these claims in a safe way. It just takes some effort.
Well, and I think too, this is something that I tell my clients is, sustainability is about becoming the best version of your brand, right? And so if you're serious about that, you're automatically going to be doing it authentically, and you're going to be willing to take those steps to have that substantiation, to have that data. So you really, I don't want to say you don't have to worry about it. You obviously want to make sure you're not breaking any rules, but you're kind of already doing that anyway, because it's just typically the companies that pursue these things and they're serious about it and they're passionate about it, they're doing it the right way. So you have far less to worry about. And when companies do that, I'll just say that whether there's plenty of examples of this, but they are the ones who are able to make the business case for sustainability. They're the ones who are legitimately able to attract those, whether it's hunters, anglers, outdoors people, whatever, to their brand because it is authentic, right? And so they're able to actually increase their customer loyalty. They're able to enhance their reputation. They're able to mitigate regulatory risks before they perhaps even become law, right? Because they see the writing on the wall way before all the other brands are going to play catch up. So I would say, to just support what you said, absolutely. Like this is something that if you do it, sustainability the right way, you should be screaming it from the rooftop, in my opinion, because it is a way to grow your business, and it's a way to do it to grow it the right way, while becoming the best version of your brand.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, James, this has been awesome. I've learned a lot talking to you. So thank you for sharing your knowledge. Really appreciate it. This has been a fun series. This will not be the last time James is on the podcast. I'll say that. But we have every episode we have said we're going to talk about some fishing, and we've yet to do that. So this is the final, the rise of sustainability regulations for this series, and let's just talk about fishing. What kind of fishing do you like to do?
Oh, it's great. I appreciate the question. I did not grow up fishing, and so fly fishing is something that I picked up actually during my early time after law school.
Okay.
I view fly fishing as really part of my own journey in becoming and continuing to practice as an environmental lawyer. It's a label that I really value, is being able to practice environmental law and work at an environmental law firm. That's a really important part of my career, in getting to work with brands who are interested in that kind of work and sustainability work. It's a huge privilege. So after graduating law school, I actually clerked. I worked for a federal judge out in Montana.
Oh, nice.
And I had a professor in law school who I became quite close with, who was really excited about me going out to Montana because he would go out every summer to fly fish. And he said, well, you're going to be clerking right on the shore of the Missouri River for a year. You've got to pick up fly fishing. And so he and I, we would chat on the phone. He had a group of folks. This was actually during COVID. And so we would all get on Zoom, and he just started shipping me boxes of fly tying materials. He sent me an old vise. He sent me all these just boxes of animal fur and different materials. And it felt really weird getting these boxes in the mail, but I actually started tying flies during the winter that I was in Montana, really, really cold, before I had cast a single time. I was tying flies and really just had a blast doing it. And I started practicing as the snow started thawing. I started practicing my cast at a local park. And my judge, I learned, because it's Montana, he actually started his early career as a fly fishing guide. And that's how he got into the law. Was he had colleagues who were fly fishing guides who were involved in some of the early fly fishing related stream access litigation in Montana that created the right to float. And that was his first law firm that he ended up going to after law school, was the Getty's firm out in Montana, that brought those lawsuits to protect the right to recreate and float in Montana, and created stream access from a statutory perspective. So he would join me at the park, and he'd help me work on my cast. And I remember there was one time I was casting this, I was alone, just trying it out, trying to get the rhythm right. And this kid who was like probably 12 years old scootered by. He's like, he shouts at me, "What are you trying to catch? Crickets?" And just laughed and scooted away. But I really I just fell in love with fly fishing. And so I started extremely spoiled fly fishing in Montana. My first fish, though, was when I went back to Massachusetts and I met up with that professor. We tied some flies that morning. We went to a local stream in just outside Boston. We were behind like a Ford dealership in this little creek, and I caught a bluegill, and it was this big. And is the first fish I ever caught. And it was so magical to wade out into this stream with this professor who, I mean, he's getting up there, Zig, and it was just a really magical experience to go fishing with him, and then get to go fishing with him again out in Montana that summer. And we ended up running Bear Track Canyon, part of the Madison, with the river keeper out there, which, that's what I mean when I say that this environmental law and fishing, it's really connected to me. It's the folks who are protecting those streams and making sure that the fish can continue to thrive. It's such a critical piece of this puzzle to me. It's water quality, it's water temperature, it's making sure that the water is continuing to flow, that folks have access to the streams. The law and the ability to recreate are completely connected in my mind and in my experience. It just blows my mind that I could park my car in this public land and get out there, get into the stream and start casting. It's the best feeling in the world. It's freedom. And so there's a lot there, but that's really fishing to me is this connection between the work that I get to do and how I learn to do the work that I do, the fishing experiences that I had, and then now getting to represent brands that support that kind of recreation. Like it blows my mind that I get to do that. Such a privilege.
I absolutely love that and can 100% relate. That's why I do what I do, right? And it's the same thing. It was like, if I could marry fly fishing and sustainability, that would be my world. And sounds like you had a similar experience and a different path, but there's something about standing in a river and connecting quite literally with fish and with nature that you're like, I got to do what I can to protect this, and I absolutely love that you share that story. I did not know that, so that was really cool. Well, James, I got to ask then, because we got a couple minutes here. Any favorite flies that you tied that you worked on that winter in Montana, or what's your favorite fly to tie, maybe?
I mean, to tie is different from, I think, some of my favorite to cast. Okay. I love casting dry flies. I mean, I think it's hard to beat the satisfaction of catching a fish on an elk hair caddis. I mean, it's a beautiful feeling. And when you're on like a spring-fed creek in Montana, just beautiful gin clear water, and you're casting and somehow you convince a fish that this thing's real. I mean, it's really hard to beat. But I think the most fun thing that I ended up tying, and I did catch some fish on it. I was casting some kind of fun, like a merger type patterns. I did this thing called the smoke jumper, which I think is a local pattern in Montana. It's got some cool red highlights in it. It's got some nice pieces. But what I really liked about that was how local it was. And I love that about flies, that you really get a local story through the names and through the imagery of it. The smoke jumpers, driving through Montana, the impact of wildfires, very real. And I got to see some of the actual smoke jumpers practicing in Montana. Thankfully, I didn't see them in action, but even seeing them practice, the work that they do is so impressive. And it's just putting themselves at risk like that to protect folks, their property, our public lands. It's incredible, the work that they do. And so when I got to tie that pattern, it really felt like I was a piece of understanding what they do, and getting to appreciate.
All right. Well, special thanks to James Pollack for all he does to protect what he loves. And thanks for tuning in to this special podcast series on the rise of sustainability regulations. If your brand needs help navigating sustainability compliance, please visit emergerstrategies.com to learn more. And if you enjoyed this episode, an absolutely free way to show your support is by leaving it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. It's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Thanks for listening and for protecting what you love.